Hey everybody, this is Coach Kurt. Welcome to ACD Combatives. Generally speaking, we talk about martial arts on this channel as it relates to self-defense and control tactics. If you know my background, you know that I do Taiho Jitsu, teach Taiho Jitsu, but I cross-train quite a bit in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And over the years, I've seen a lot of influence from catch wrestling in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world, obviously in the MMA world. I've cross-trained in MMA with MMA coaches and Krav Maga, Kaji Kembo, quite a bit of different things that I've dabbled in over the years. But mostly what I cross-train in outside of Taiho Jitsu, and Taiho Jitsu, if you're not familiar, is basically a subset of Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. Mostly what I train is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Specifically, I focus hard on what you would consider Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, self-defense based stuff. Now, I did train at a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school for a bit. That the instructor, it was an MMA school mostly, and the Jiu-Jitsu program was influenced heavily by catch because the coach, professor there was catch back in the 90s before he was ever in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And this is a generic statement I'm about to make, so don't get offended one way or the other, regardless of what camp you're from. Generically speaking, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tends to really focus as hard as it can, and I bring this from the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu clan. Elio Gracie basically said that you should focus on technique as much as possible because there's always somebody bigger, stronger, more athletic than you. So you need to be able to be that much better at technique. Really focus on the blending and the flow and the technique. Now, not to suggest for a second that that's not important in catch wrestling. But let's face it, if you're familiar with catch wrestling, you will see that generally speaking, and wrestling in general, it doesn't matter if you're talking freestyle, folk, Greco, we're talking very athletic people, generally speaking, especially at the national and international level, the Olympics. You see, I mean, nobody is probably scarier and more athletic than an Olympic level wrestler. They're just amazing athletes. And in the catch world, and we're also going to consider combat submission wrestling because that's basically a modern version and approach to catch wrestling. There's also shoot fighting, shoot wrestlers. There's also pancrase. And obviously the grappling and wrestling that you see in modern mixed martial arts, it's very catch-like. So there is a huge influence to that approach to grappling. Another thing that kind of separates the two, and again, this is very generically speaking, and I can say this because the gym I rolled at, again, it was an MMA gym that had a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program. The professor had a strong catch background. There's a rule of thumb in catch wrestling that if you are not continuously causing pain and discomfort to your opponent, then you're not grappling correctly. There's a lot of things you would do in catch that would be considered ungentlemanly or unsportsmanlike or just dirty pool, as it were, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And that if you did these things at a Jiu-Jitsu school, you'd be considered a jerk or an asshole. In catch, it's everyday thing. So there's things that we did in that gym that I would have never done at another school or a school that I train at now because it would be considered bad form, as it were. Jiu-Jitsu tends to be a little bit more gentlemanly approach to grappling. Again, that's generically speaking. And of course, all bets are off in a competition. You'll see people do things in competition in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that they wouldn't do on the mat at their gym with their teammates. So again, everything I just said, generically speaking. But I think anyone that's done both would probably agree with that statement. Now let's look at availability. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is an international. It's exploded in all countries, but here in America where I'm at, it's definitely, and I'm on the West Coast, but it's everywhere. It's huge. There was a point in jiu-jitsu where you could hardly find any jiu-jitsu instructors, and it wasn't uncommon to have a purple belt running the school. That was back in the day, and now it seems like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts grow on trees, and it's really easy to find a school. It is more difficult to find a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school that really emphasizes self-defense over sport. So a lot of times you end up going to an MMA school instead. But Catch wrestling can be very difficult to find, especially in the United States. But if you train at a catch school, or you know of a catch school in your area and you want to mention it in your comments, please do. It's fascinating program, fascinating system of wrestling. But the thing about catch wrestling is it's probably not as organized as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's hard. Now, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is hard as well, but like I said earlier, catch really emphasizes causing pain and discontent and discomfort to your opponent all the time. And for the average person who's just looking for a good workout, get some basic self-defense, and maybe they're older like me, I'm 53 with bad knees, a bad hip, constantly being in pain and being discomfort. Grappling is bad enough as it is. If you know what I'm talking about, if you've grappled for any length of time, there's a joke that if you wake up and you're not in pain, then you're dead and probably already in Valhalla, because you're not feeling any pain. You're just not doing jiu-jitsu anymore then. But catch wrestling is known to be brutal, and that, some people just aren't interested in that. But obviously there is a huge influence of catch in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, to the point where I predict, and you already kind of see this to a certain degree depending on what school you roll at, or what competition venue that you're looking at. And this also has a lot to do with the influence of MMA in Jiu-Jitsu. But there will be a point where you could go to a catch school and a Jiu-Jitsu school that focuses only on Nogi or even Gi, and it's going to be difficult to tell the difference. Now, one of the things that you can also look at is maybe a reason why people aren't as interested in catch is the belt system. Here in America, Americans love to have some kind of recognition, a sticker, a star, some kind of and it's because a lot of modern Americans are very, they like that gratification, and to get a belt and be able to track your progress is very important to them. So you see systems like catch, boxing, Muay Thai, and there are other systems. Sambo has belts, but it's only because it keeps the gi. Traditionally speaking, there is no belt system in Sambo. It's either a red belt or a blue belt, generally speaking, because that's the color of the gi that they wear, the jacket that they wear. But generally speaking, Americans love that. And you see the success of certain martial arts, I think, based on the belt system. That's just one minor aspect. There are other aspects. Like I said, catch can be very painful and rough on the body, and that's another reason why I think it's not as popular. And again, I just don't think it's been pushed and marketed as well as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that's true of Judo as well. I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in America anyway, because you go places like certain parts of Europe and Japan, Judo is huge. It's massive. Internationally, Judo is huge, but in America, Judo is not as big as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has done a really good job of marketing, and on that note, I think that anytime you take something like Judo, which in my opinion is a beast of a sport, and turn it into an Olympic competition, the rules are going to change it to a point where it's fun to watch as a spectator, but it's taken so much juice out of the squeeze that the system isn't as good as it used to be. I don't think modern Judo is nearly as good as back in the day Judo, but I just got sidetracked. I apologize. So let's wrap this up. Before I do that, I'd tell you what I'd like to see. I'd like to see a push towards submission only, no point grappling in general. All techniques are authorized, and you win by either tapping or napping. That's to me pure grappling at its best. Not eliminating any moves, generally speaking. There are certain techniques that are just too dangerous to allow in competition, but we've done videos about that kind of stuff. But that's what I would like to see. But to sum up, I think both systems are amazing. All right, everybody, please like, subscribe, and share.
Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out. let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out.